Think of the coldest night you have ever slept through. Maybe the heating died in January. Maybe it was a tent and a sleeping bag that promised more than it delivered. And you lay there at 3 in the morning doing the maths on how long until sunrise. Whatever night you just thought of, you had walls, or a zip. You had a mattress, or a mat between you and the ground, and a door between you and everything with teeth. Now take all of it away. The walls, the bag, the mat, the door. Leave a person on open ground in January, in the kind of winter that kills unattended sheep, and let the temperature go where it wants. That was every single winter night for hundreds of thousands of years. Not a survival story, not an emergency, a Tuesday. And the strangest part is not that they survived it. It is that almost everything they used to survive it is still in your bedroom tonight. You are still using their kit. You have just forgotten what it is for. Here's the problem, stated properly. A walking body is a furnace. Muscles burn fuel, and most of that fuel becomes heat. As long as you keep moving, winter has to work hard to hurt you. Then you lie down, and the furnace shuts off. Your muscles go quiet. Your body deliberately lowers its own core temperature to fall asleep, about a degree, because that drop is part of how sleep starts. Your blood pulls in from your skin. Everything about falling asleep is your body turning the heating down on purpose, which means sleep is precisely the moment the cold gets its chance. A person who is fine hauling firewood at -10 can die in a snowbank at -10, doing nothing but lying still. And the failure is quiet. Core temperature slides from 37 degrees toward 35, and the first thing the cold takes is judgment. You stop noticing you are cold. Then the shivering, your last automatic defense, burns through its fuel and simply stops, and the body begins shutting down non-essential districts like a city in a blackout. Nothing about it looks dramatic. It looks like someone falling asleep. So the question in this video is sharper than it looks. It is not how ancient humans endured winter. They endured it the way you do, by moving and eating and complaining. The question is how they got away with becoming helpless in it. Every night, on the ground, outside. The answer comes in layers, from the ground up. And the first layer is the oldest piece of furniture on Earth. In the Lubombo Mountains on South Africa's border with Eswatini, there is a cave called Border Cave. People lived in it, on and off, for 250,000 years. Near the back of that cave, archaeologists found sheaves of grass, broad-leafed grass, gathered and laid down in bundles, over and over, layer after layer. The oldest layers are about 200,000 years old. That is the oldest bed anyone has ever found. It is older than every pyramid, every city, every farm. When those grass bundles were laid down, there were still other kinds of human walking the earth. And here is the detail that tells you it was engineering and not just a pile of grass. The grass was laid on ash, deliberately. Sometimes the old bedding was burned, and the new bedding went down on top of the remains. Ash does two jobs. It is a clean, dry, insulating base. And ticks and biting insects will not cross it. The bed came with pest control built in. At another South African site, Sibudu, the bedding is 77,000 years old and made of sedges, topped with a layer of leaves from a tree whose chemistry kills insects. They did not just have beds, they had treated mattresses. So the bed is not a comfort invention. It never was. It is winter equipment, and it is aimed at an enemy you have stopped noticing. Ask anyone what makes a winter night dangerous, and they will say, the air, the wind, the snow. The ground is worse than all of them. Air is actually a terrible thief of heat. It is thin, it barely touches you, and a layer of trapped air is what every blanket you have ever owned is made of. But the ground is dense, and in winter, it is a slab of cold that goes down further than you are tall, and when you lie on it, it is in direct contact with the biggest surface of your body. Lie on frozen ground, and it will pull heat out of your back faster than a fire can push it into your front. Modern mountaineers know this coldly and precisely. The mat under you matters more than the bag over you. Ancient humans knew it first. That is what the grass is. 10 centimeters of dead plant stems is millions of pockets of trapped air. A wall between your spine and the one thing in the landscape that never warms up. And when grass was not enough, There was a stronger version. You build a fire, you let it burn down, you rake the embers away, and you sleep on the warmed earth where the fire stood. The ground that spent the evening being your enemy spends the night being your radiator, giving back the heat the fire lent it hour after hour until morning. Bed first, fire second. That ordering is not an accident, and it is the opposite of the one you would have guessed. Now the fire. Because the fire is real, it is just not what the films show you. The films show one enormous bonfire with people asleep in a ring around it, faces glowing, backs in the dark. Try that in January and you will discover the problem with your own body. A fire only warms the side of you that faces it. Your front cooks while your back freezes, and half the heat of your huge, expensive fire sails straight up into the sky, warming nothing but the stars. The documented pattern from people who actually slept this way is smaller and smarter. Not one big fire, several small ones. In the central Australian desert, where clear nights fall to 0 and below, Pit Junja Jar Ah families slept between small fires. Fires the size of a dinner plate, one on each side of a sleeping person, sometimes a row of them threading through a whole sleeping family. A small fire close to your body delivers more usable heat than a bonfire 3 meters away, and it does it on a fraction of the wood. Behind the sleepers, a windbreak of brush, a U, curved like a cupped hand. It kills the wind, and it catches the fire's heat and leans it back over the sleeping bodies. A bed below you, a small fire either side of you, a wall of brush behind you. That is not a camp. That is an appliance, and every part of it is pointed at the same enemy. But an appliance made of fire has a weakness. Fires go out, which means someone has to be awake. A few years ago, researchers put activity trackers on a group of Hadza hunter-gatherers in Tanzania and recorded who was asleep and who was awake all night for 20 days. 20 days is nearly 500 hours. Here is the number that matters. Across all of it, the total time when every adult was asleep at the same moment came to 18 minutes. 18 minutes. In 20 days. At any given point in the night, a handful of people were awake. Somebody stirring the fire, somebody soothing a baby, somebody just lying there with their eyes open, listening. For 99.8% of the night, the camp had a sentry, and nobody had ever assigned one. The rota is built into bodies. Young adults are owls. Their bodies do not want to sleep until deep into the night. Old people are larks, done with sleep at first light, awake in the coldest, darkest hour before dawn, when the fires burn lowest and the predators are boldest. Spread the ages across a camp, and the night covers itself. You have met this system. It lives in your house. The teenager who will not go to bed and the grandparent who is up at 5 making tea are not being difficult. They are two ends of an ancient watch rotation, still turning up for a shift that no longer exists. There is one more thing about a winter night that your bedroom has hidden from you: the length of it. In midwinter, away from the equator, the dark lasts 16 hours. No lamps, no candles even, for most of the story. When the light went, the day was simply over. And no human body can sleep 16 hours straight. So the night had a shape you would not recognize. The best documented version comes from pre-industrial Europe, where letters and court records and doctor's notes talk casually about the first sleep and the second sleep, as if everyone knew. People slept a few hours, woke deep in the night, and were awake on purpose. They fed the fire, they talked, they prayed or thought about their dreams or checked the animals. Then they went down again for the second sleep and got up at dawn. For a long time, historians assumed that was just a custom. Then, in the early 90s, a sleep researcher named Thomas Ware ran the obvious experiment. He took 8 healthy modern men and gave them honest winter nights, 14 hours of darkness, every night for a month. By the 4th week, every one of them had fallen into the old pattern: 4 hours of sleep. 1 to 3 hours of calm, quiet wakefulness. 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody taught it to them. The pattern was waiting in their bodies for the first winter dark that let it out. Put that beside the night watch, and the fires, and the whole system clicks together. Of course, people woke in the middle of the night. The fires needed feeding in the middle of the night. The watch filled itself because waking at that hour is not a malfunction, it is the factory setting, which puts a different light on the modern experience of snapping awake at 3 in the morning and lying there, alert, for no reason you can name. Your doctor calls it insomnia. For roughly the whole of human history, it had a different name. It was called the middle of the night, and you were supposed to be there. Here is a fact about ancient sleep that is so obvious it is almost invisible. It was never solitary. A sleeping band was a heap. Adults, children, grandparents, all within reach of each other, sharing one pool of warmth. 2 bodies under one cover lose heat far more slowly than one. A family loses it more slowly still. Emperor penguins survived the Antarctic winter with no fire, no bed, and no shelter at all, purely by huddling. In a blizzard at -60, the inside of a penguin huddle sits at body temperature, and the birds slowly rotate, taking turns on the frozen outer wall so that nobody stands the whole shift in the wind. Thousands of animals, one shared skin of warmth. Humans had the huddle and the fire. Travelers who stayed with hunter-gatherer bands into living memory described the same architecture on the ground. Nobody at the camp's cold edge for long, children in the warm middle, the whole family functioning as one large, slow-breathing radiator. And not only humans. In the Australian desert, the dogs slept in the heap too. Dingoes pulled close on cold nights and used, in the words of the people who did it, like hot water bottles. A dog runs warmer than you do, around 39 degrees. And unlike a fire, it does not go out at 4 in the morning. On the coldest nights, you brought more dogs. We made a whole video about how wolves became dogs. This is part of what they were for, the first heating system with a heartbeat. Which makes your bedroom tonight the strange one. A single human, or at most 2, sealed in a room alone, is a way of sleeping that almost no one in history would recognize. Privacy is a luxury good, and it is much, much younger than the bed. Everything so far is equipment. Grass, embers, windbreaks, dogs. Now for the part that sounds made up. At the far southern tip of South America, in Tierra del Fuego, winters are wet, windy, and hover near freezing for months. The Yagan people lived there for thousands of years, and they did it almost naked. Not poorly dressed, essentially undressed. A scrap of seal or otter skin, worn against the wind, described by one visitor as about the size of a pocket handkerchief. That visitor was Charles Darwin, in 1832. He watched a woman hold her canoe alongside his ship, in falling sleet, nursing a newborn baby, both of them bare, while the sleet landed and melted on her skin. He wrote it down because he could not believe it either. These were people who slept in the open, in that climate, on the ground, in the rain. Modern science went looking for the trick and found it in their bodies. Studies of Fuegian remains and genetics found variants seen nowhere else on Earth in genes tied to brown fat, a special tissue whose only job is to burn fuel and make heat. Estimates of their winter energy use put them at more than 2.5 times basal metabolism day after day, which is the output of an endurance athlete spent entirely on being warm. They paid for winter in food and ran the furnace hotter. It is the most expensive possible answer to the question in this video's title, and it worked for thousands of years. If the Yagan sound like a one-off, there was a stranger discovery closer to the fires we already visited. In the 1950s, physiologists went to the central Australian desert and ran a blunt experiment. They had Pit Junja Jar men sleep the way they always slept, on the ground, between small fires, naked, on nights that dropped to 0. And alongside them, for comparison, the European researchers tried to sleep the same way. The instruments told 2 completely different stories. The Europeans had a terrible night. As the cold bit, their bodies fought it. They shivered, their metabolism climbed, they woke over and over. Fighting the cold is loud, and you cannot sleep through a fight. The desert men did something the researchers did not expect. Their skin cooled. Their bodies did not panic, did not shiver, did not spend. They let the cold in, a controlled distance, and slept straight through it. Their bodies had stopped treating a cold night as an emergency because for their whole lives it never had been one. The equipment list was identical, the bodies were not. Winter, given enough nights, does not just change what you build, it changes what you are. One more upside down fact for the people in the deepest cold. Fresh snow is mostly not water. It is up to 9 parts air, trapped in a white foam, and trapped air, as every blanket knows, is insulation. Snow is freezing to touch and brilliant at keeping heat where it already is. The animals figured this out long before we did. Grouse dive headfirst into snowbanks and spend the night inside them, because inside a drift is warmer than any perch in the wind. Under a meter of snow, the world holds steady near zero while the open air above goes to -30. Circumpolar peoples built the same physics into their nights. Dig into a drift, hollow a chamber, keep the entrance low so your warm air cannot escape, and your body heat alone lifts the inside tens of degrees above the night outside. The Inuit refined the idea into the igloo, a house made of nothing but weather. The numbers deserve saying slowly. Outside, -40 and wind. Inside, with nothing but body heat and a single oil lamp, the air holds above freezing. And on the sleeping platform, raised into the warmest layer under the dome, it can reach 10 degrees or more. A 60-degree difference built in an hour out of the storm itself. Nobody slept on snow, they slept in it. The blizzard that looks like the night's biggest threat is also the night's best building material. Grass beds and small fires carried people through cold nights for most of human history. But the people who walked into Ice Age Europe and Siberia met winters that fight dirty. -20, -30. Nights where exposed skin fails in minutes and no windbreak is enough. Their answer was to stop leaving the bed at all. They started wearing it. We know roughly when, from the strangest witness imaginable. Lice. Head lice live in hair. Body lice are a separate breed that can only live in clothing, and a species cannot live in a thing that does not exist. Geneticists read the family tree of lice like a clock, and the clock says body lice split away at least 83,000 years ago, and possibly 170,000. Clothing is so old that parasites had time to evolve for it, but loose hides draped over shoulders leak. Cold air pours in at every gap, and in a Siberian winter, the gaps kill. The upgrade that mattered turned up in a Siberian cave, a needle carved from bird bone with a drilled eye for thread. It is 50,000 years old, and it would work today. A needle means sewn seams. Sewn seams mean fitted clothing, closed at the wrist and the ankle and the neck, and layered, soft fur turned inwards, tough hide facing the weather, with a jacket of trapped air held warm against the skin. It is the grass bed again, the blanket again, the same one idea, miniaturized and buttoned around a walking body. Arctic peoples refined that design so completely that a person in traditional double-layer furs can sleep out a polar night that would kill an unprotected human before midnight. Thousands of years later, a man died crossing an alpine pass with the whole philosophy still on him. The Iceman, the one museums call Ut C, was found with a woven grass cape, and his shoes, under the leather, were stuffed with hay. Insulation you restuff, exactly like the cave floors. The oldest mattress in the world, worn on his feet. By the deepest cold, the bed, the blanket, and the house had stopped being separate things. They had merged into the outfit. All this time, your own body has been carrying a souvenir of those nights. Newborn babies cannot shiver. Shivering needs muscle they do not have yet, and newborns are tiny, with far too much surface for their volume, which means they lose heat catastrophically fast. By the physics alone, every baby in history should have been a tragedy on its first cold night. They are not, because babies are born wearing an internal furnace. Around the neck, the spine, the kidneys, they carry pads of brown fat, the same tissue the Yagan genetics point at. Brown fat does not store energy. It burns it directly into heat, no shivering required, or a quiet chemical fire that switches itself on when the temperature falls. For a century, textbooks said adults lose it all. Then in 2009, researchers noticed something odd on medical scans. PT scans light up tissue that is burning fuel, and in patients who had waited in cool rooms, patches at the neck and collarbone were glowing. Grown adults, running the baby furnace, decades after the textbooks said it was gone. It responds to training too. People who work outdoors through winter and swimmers who insist on cold water all year show more of it than the rest of us. Yours is dialed down because you live indoors at 21 degrees and it has nothing to do. The furnace is still installed. The winters that built it are the ones this video is about. Your body has never fully believed in central heating. Now walk back into your bedroom and look at it properly. The mattress is the grass bed, refined for 200,000 years, still doing the exact same job, holding a wall of trapped air between your body and the cold mass below. The duvet is the fire you do not have to tend, an envelope of warm air that never burns down at 4 in the morning and never needs a watch shift. The electric blanket is the ember-warmed ground, with the raking done for you. The dog asleep on the end of the bed is not a modern indulgence. It is the oldest appliance in the room, still reporting for a night duty it held for 15,000 years. And if your household has a teenager awake at 1 a.m., and a grandparent up at 5, the Sentry Rota is still running too, protecting a camp that no longer needs it. Even the numbers made it through. Sleep scientists will tell you the ideal bedroom is around 18 degrees, cooler than the rest of your house, because your body still expects night to be colder than day and uses the drop as the signal to power down. You sleep badly in a hot room because as far as your body is concerned, no night in 200,000 years was ever warm. Nothing was thrown away. The whole campsite came indoors with you, piece by piece, and got plastered over. So go back to that night from the start. The dead heating, the useless sleeping bag, the 3 a.m. arithmetic. Notice what actually frightened you about it. Not the temperature, really. 10,000 generations of your family slept through worse with grass and embers. What frightened you was that you were dealing with it alone. That is the real answer to the question in the title. Ancient humans did not survive winter nights with equipment, although the equipment was brilliant. They survived because nobody faced a winter night as one person. The warmth was shared, the watch was shared, the dogs and the fires and the heap of sleeping family were one system, and everybody in it was keeping every other body alive. Winter did not just teach humans to build beds, it taught them that sleeping is something you do together. And it burned that lesson in so deep that a cold night alone still feels, somewhere under your ribs, like the oldest kind of wrong. The cold was never really the problem. Being alone in it was. And that your body has never forgotten.